When you think about what you do when you are not being disciplined, what are you doing? You're eating food that's not good for you, and that ultimately doesn't make you feel good. You're skipping your workouts, which ultimately doesn't make you feel good. You're spending too much time on social media, which is ultimately a cheap dopamine addiction. And so discipline is really changing your mindset to think about, well, what's going to be good for me in the long term? So this is embarrassing to admit, but when I was in my 20s, I was a huge slacker. My dad and sister died a year apart from each other while I was in high school. And afterwards, I got really depressed and I didn't cope well. And I quit everything. I quit jobs after 3 months. I quit boyfriends. I quit blogs, just everything. I quit everything. And over time, I realized that I'm not going to be able to do what I want to do if I keep quitting everything, if I didn't have discipline. I had dreams. I wanted to travel the world and I wanted to write whatever form that took. I wanted to develop a readership and audience around my work. I didn't know what that would look like today, but I knew in my heart that that's what I wanted. And I knew that if I kept going on the path that I was going of quitting everything, that I would never amount to anything. I would never make my dreams come true. I would always have within me an unlived life. And I've always had this inner compulsion to live my purpose and to be the best that I could be. And now, even deeper, to prove to my past self that no matter what's happened before, that I can create anything that I want to and become that person. And in order to do that, I needed to learn discipline. So over the years, discipline has transformed me from a sad, unfulfilled girl to someone who is living her purpose. I've written consistently online for about 6 or 7 years. I have amassed an audience of readers who love my work. I've helped thousands of people heal emotionally, connect to their purpose, become more of who they are. And it's all because I've learned to be consistent and disciplined. And discipline, I just define as, well, we'll get to that in a second. So today's video is really going to focus on the strategic inner work to build discipline, because if you focus too much on the practical how-to of, discipline, because unless you really focus in on the inner work, then you won't do the how-to. So today is really going to be focused on that inner work. So the most important inner work step is last. So definitely stay tuned, but we need to build up to it. Everything is organized sequentially. So first, I want you to really change your perception of what discipline is. I feel like people have negative connotations about discipline, and maybe that's part of the problem and why people can't do it, because we view it as forcing ourselves into doing things that we don't want to do, being boring, living just a boring lifestyle. But I really think about discipline as doing what's good for you rather than what you're addicted to. Because when you think about what you do when you are not being disciplined, what are you doing? You're eating food that's not good for you, and that ultimately doesn't make you feel good. You're skipping your workouts, which ultimately doesn't make you feel good. You're spending too much time on social media, which is ultimately a cheap dopamine addiction. You are not spending time on your goals because you're too maybe attached to other people's priorities, or you don't have a clear vision for your life, or it feels better in the moment to try and get that external validation rather than focus on your own things. So it's all ultimately about you're like selling yourself short because you're focused on these short-term wins. And so discipline is really changing your mindset to think about, well, what's going to be good for me in the long term? In the short term, it might feel really difficult to sit through this. If I'm writing, for example, and I'm having trouble expressing my thoughts, that used to be something that made me quit. But now I see that if I can just sit through that short-term discomfort of feeling like, oh my God, I don't know what to write about. I don't know how to say this. Am I good enough? And can I really do this? Which are kind of all those thoughts underneath of that desire to just get up and walk away and quit. If you can just sit with that short-term discomfort And then that's how you create that discipline to be consistent and end up getting the results that you want in life. So just ask yourself, do I want to be the worst addicted version of me? Or do I want to be the best, vibrant, healthiest, most fulfilled version of me? And that might sound dramatic, but every choice that you make is really a vote for one of those two directions. And then spiritually, each choice that you make, each vote that you make, casts as a different timeline. So I really believe that we all have parallel lives and that each choice we make sort of activates a different version of that timeline. And each choice that you make casts a vote for that specific timeline. So every time you go to bed when you're supposed to be going to bed, every time you do the project that you feel a little nervous or scared about, every time you exercise, even though you really don't want to, you're making a vote. And the more votes that you cast for a specific lifetime, the more that you're able to activate that lifetime and bring into reality the dreams that you have. So second, the next step is change the story about who you tell yourself that you are. So if you tell yourself, I'm undisciplined, and you think that about yourself, that's giving yourself a permission slip to give up. Because then you can be like, oh, I'm undisciplined. I don't have to do what's uncomfortable. I can just chill out on the couch and watch Netflix. And it's okay because I'm undisciplined. And then every time that you cave into temptation, it reinforces that story that you're telling about yourself. So then you're creating evidence that you're undisciplined, when really it's like that narrative that you're saying to yourself is creating that space for you to give up and to cave into that lowest version of you. So instead, say things like, I want to be disciplined. I'm learning to be disciplined. And then when you say that, then you automatically start to back that story up with behavior. Oh, I'm disciplined. I'm not the kind of person who gives up when it gets hard. I'm disciplined. I'm not the kind of person who caves to this short-term temptation. I am going to do what's best for me. I'm going to cast a vote for that higher and more exciting timeline. And some people think that discipline is innate. You either have it or you don't, but it's not true. Really, nothing in life is innate. There's like really interesting research around growth mindset if you want to look into that. But basically, discipline, like a lot of other things in life, is like a muscle. And the more that you use it, the more that it grows. Just know that every time that you make a little vote for that disciplined self timeline, you are building that muscle. And it happens in increments. Like every time that you put down your phone 5 minutes sooner than you would have and not mindless scroll, that creates that confidence. It adds to that narrative in your head that I'm disciplined and this is how I behave. But it's also just a skill. You get better at sticking to your habits, sticking to your routines, sticking to your schedule. Because when you act from discipline, it creates momentum in your life. The more that you become the person who does the thing, the easier it is to do the thing because you're creating those habits. So that makes it easier. But again, you're ascending spiritually. You're raising your vibration because you're becoming more fulfilled. You're becoming more vibrant. You're becoming more of you. You're expressing more of your spirit. And so when your vibration raises and you become more fully self-expressed, then it just becomes easier because you're sort of on that same energetic frequency as these other high frequency behaviors, like working out, like working on creative projects. And so then the lower sort of frequency activities don't really appeal to you anymore. I'm not saying like never watch TV or never watch Netflix, but there's a difference for when you're doing it to escape something and when you're doing it at the end of the day to relax, right? Those are different intentions, different energies, and they have different vibrations. And the more that you are vibrating or the more that your energy or frequency is at that higher level, you're not less likely to indulge in things that take you down a notch or a frequency because it just doesn't feel good. And it's not who you are. So you just become a different person. And as you become a different person, then those beneficial activities are easier to stick to. So it's like the more that you prioritize your creative activities, the more you can't handle not spending time on them. Or the more that you eat healthy and exercise, the more you hate how you feel when you don't do those things. The best way to create the discipline muscle is to start small. I started building that discipline muscle muscle with basic 30-day challenges. I think the very first one that I did was actually gratitude challenge. And I just committed to 30 days. Every time I get into a negative thought spiral, I'm just going to change and find something to be grateful for. Or, you could meditate for 30 days. I have a 30-day meditation journal that you might find really helpful. I'll link to it below. Or you could just journal whatever for 30 days. You could meditate for 5 minutes. You can do anything. And I'll link to a blog post where I have like my whole daily routine full of really great self-care activities. But if you just pick one and stick to it for 30 days, because thinking about committing to something for the rest of your life is really overwhelming. But if you can think about committing to something for 30 days, something manageable and small that you can kind of wrap your head around and be like, yeah, I can do that, then you're more likely to hold yourself to that. So just take that, give yourself a 30-day challenge and then see what happens. So the third important thing to do is to identify and resolve inner conflicts. An inner conflict is when two different parts of you want two different things. So this can be different roles you play, like entrepreneur versus wife, or it could be unhealed you versus healed you. This is a really big topic for today, but I'll just share a quick story to illustrate this. So back in the day, I was a newspaper reporter. One day, my coworkers left a little bit early to go for a hike. And I was like, oh my God, you guys are going for a hike. I have so much work to do. And I watched so jealously as they left because I felt so crushed under my workload. And I really wanted to go, but I had all these stories I was working on and I felt responsible for filling the paper. And as I left that night, late, of course, like I always did, after finishing my stories, I just started to cry. I felt this weight of feeling responsible for everything and being under an unmanageable workload. And I just like looked at my coworkers. I felt like they were lazy. They weren't like living up to the standards that I had, right? And years later, I found a to-do list from that era. And I was just like half crying, half laughing when I saw it, because I noticed that half of those things on that list didn't even have to be done that day. And if I remember correctly, my editor didn't even use half of the stories that I wrote. So I didn't need to stay late that day. I could have gone with my coworkers. And I mean, there were 3 of us. It was never up to me to fill the whole paper. And now, after all the inner work and shadow work that I've done, I realized the unhealed parts of me that were compelling me to be out of balance in that specific area. And I never would have been able to find balance or be disciplined, because discipline is as much about what you do as what you don't do. A lot of times when you have trouble doing what's good for you, it's because you're being pulled to overexert in one area of life. And if you find yourself overexerting in one area of life and not having enough for other areas, because that's discipline too, it takes discipline to live a well-rounded life, then you need to understand and heal these inner conflicts that are pulling at you to be out of balance. A lot of times we have unrealistic expectations of ourselves, and those unrealistic expectations choke out our ability to thrive in other areas of our lives. We end up overexerting in one area and not having enough time or energy for other areas, and we tell ourselves that that is what we have to do. But it's not. We don't have to live that way. There is a version of you in some timeline who's thriving, who is enjoying every aspect of her life, who it has time and energy to pay attention to and give effort to every area of her life that is meaningful to her in a way that makes sense when you look at the total package. And that's really what I help people with identifying a clear vision for their lives and then sort of understanding what are these inner conflicts that are keeping them from creating the balance, creating the schedule that helps you work towards that in a balanced and fulfilling way. It's completely up to you to make the choices that are required to live the life that you want to live. Discipline isn't about doing everything. It's about doing the right things, because you can convince yourself to do all the things in one specific area of life, but that leaves you not doing other things that are really important to you, because discipline can easily become toxic. It can end up turning into overworking or over exercising or getting to a place where you're doing too much. So it's like you want to have discipline in a way that keeps you in balance. And I'm going to be releasing next week a video about how to be balanced. So definitely subscribe to my channel if you want that. So these inner conflicts can steal your happiness and potential if you're not careful. And if you want to learn how to resolve them, definitely check out the shadow work video that I'm linking somewhere, and check out that shadow work video to learn how to resolve those inner conflicts. And if you liked this video, definitely give it a like and subscribe to my channel to stay up to date for new videos to help you create happiness, health, and success through following your inner guidance. I'm so excited to dive more into this topic. So I'll see you soon. Okay, bye.